All right, so we've got a huge college basketball game tonight. Number 4, Houston Cougars taking on the Kansas Jayhawks. Should be a good one.
Yeah, and you know what's really interesting about this matchup?
What's that?
It's more than just about the star players. It's like two totally different ways to play the game.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Houston, they're all about that tough defense and then a slower, more deliberate offense. But Kansas,
They like to get up and down the court.
exactly. They can be really explosive, and you never know what they're going to do next. So we've got a stack of stuff to help us break it all down for you guys. Game previews, betting odds, even some deep dives into all the team stats and, who matches up against who.
It's like our mission today to give everyone listening all the insights they need to, really get this game.
Yeah, like what are those X factors to watch, you know? Like, what could really swing it one way or the other,
Who's got the edge?
right? And of course, the big question, can Houston cover that spread? They're favored by a lot.
Oh, wait, so first things first. The game tips off at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday, March 3rd
That's tonight.
at the Fertitta Center in Houston. You can catch it on ESPN.
And speaking of Houston, they are heavily favored, like I said, by 9.5 points.
Whoa!
Over-under is set at 132.5 points, which, if you think about it,
Vegas is thinking it's going to be a low-scoring game, huh?
pretty much. I mean, does that surprise you at all?
Honestly,
No.
not really. Houston, their defense this season has been insane.
No kid.
They're only letting teams score like 58 points a game. That's the best in the whole country.
And it's not just that they hold teams to low scores, they just shut down offenses completely.
How do they do that?
Their whole strategy is built on this aggressive, trapping, just suffocating ball pressure.
So they force turnovers and mess up the other team's rhythm.
Exactly. It forces those bad shots, those contested shots, and easy baskets. Forget about it. They don't give those up.
That defense, it makes a huge difference. Their scoring differential is plus 16.8 points. They're winning by almost 17 points on average.
It's a huge advantage. But hold on.
Right.
Kansas, they're not slouches on offense. They're averaging almost 76 points a game.
Okay, so they can score.
Yeah, and that's what makes this matchup so interesting. Houston's defense is elite, no doubt, but Kansas has the firepower to, maybe exploit a weakness or two. And they've got Hunter Dickinson.
He's a beast, averaging a double-double.
Remember that game against Colorado? 32 points, 13 rebounds.
Oh, yeah, he was unstoppable.
And then you've got KJ Adams. Breakout season, just put up 21 and 13 in their last game.
That's right. So Kansas's front court, Dickinson and Adams, that's their key. If they can own the boards and get those two scoring consistently,
They could keep it close.
there's a real clash of strengths here. Houston's defense against Kansas's strong front court. It's going to be fun to watch how this all plays out.
Hmm.
All right, let's get into the specifics. Who are some of the key players, the matchups that could decide this thing?
All right, so for Houston, got to start with LJ Cryer. He's their leading scorer. Dude can light it up from three. Then you got Jawan Roberts. That guy cleans up the glass.
So he's the rebounding machine.
Yeah, and a strong inside presence, too. And we can't forget Melis Uzan. He's their floor general. Sets the pace, makes things happen on offense.
So Houston's got a pretty balanced attack. But Kansas has their own guys, right? Like Dickinson, of course, but what about Zeke Mayo? He can hit those threes, but had a quiet game against Texas Tech. You think he bounces back tonight?
That's going to be huge. If Mayo's hitting his shots, it really stretches Houston's defense. Opens things up for Dickinson and Adams inside.
And that could be a problem for Houston, especially if Kansas can take advantage of any defensive lapses. They almost beat Houston last time, remember?
Oh, yeah. Led late in the game, but a crucial turnover. Let Houston steal that win.
It's got to give them some confidence, right, that they can hang with Houston.
For sure. It shows that even with their record and that amazing defense, Houston isn't invincible. Maybe this one's closer than people think.
I like it. So what are the experts saying? What are they predicting?
Well, one source is going with a pretty comfortable Houston win, 74-64. But another one's leaning towards a higher scoring game, thinks Kansas might cover the spread.
Wow, so we got two very different predictions. This one really could go either way. Okay, so we've got these different predictions, two totally different styles of play. What are some things Kansas really needs to do if they want to pull off this upset?
Well, they got to win the battle on the boards, for sure. Houston is one of the best rebounding teams in the country. Kansas can't give them extra possessions, especially with a guy like Roberts crashing the offensive glass.
Right, but it's not just Roberts, is it? I mean, Houston, their whole team is committed to rebounding. They're so aggressive and physical. Kansas has to match that intensity.
Absolutely. fight for every loose ball. And they got to limit those turnovers. Remember that last game? That late turnover was costly. They can't afford to make those kinds of mistakes against Houston.
Makes sense. But what about their offense? Can they actually score enough points to keep up with Houston?
That's the big question, isn't it? They rely a lot on Dickinson and Adams, that front court duo. Dickinson, he can put up points like crazy.
Yeah.
He can get into foul trouble, especially if Houston plays physical.
Ah, I see. So Kansas needs other guys to step up and score, too.
Exactly. Zeke Mayo, he's got to hit those threes. If he gets hot early, it'll force Houston to, extend their defense, give Dickinson and Adams more room to work inside.
That makes a lot of sense. So Mayo shooting could be a real game changer. What about Houston, though? Are there any weaknesses that Kansas can try to exploit?
Well, one thing that could be an issue for them is depth. They rely a lot on their starting five. If a couple of those guys get into foul trouble.
That could change everything.
Right. It throws off the rhythm, and Kansas could take advantage of that.
So Kansas should attack the basket, try to get Houston starters in foul trouble.
That's one way to go. Or they could try to push the pace, really tire out those Houston starters. The more tired they get, the more mistakes they're going to make.
Okay, earlier you talked about offensive efficiency. What exactly does that mean, and how does it relate to this matchup?
Yeah, so basically, offensive efficiency is just a way to measure how well a team scores on each possession. It looks at turnovers, shot selection, all that stuff. And Houston, they're ranked 29th in the nation.
So they're not just good on defense.
No way. They're really efficient on offense, too. They don't waste possessions. They make smart decisions. Even if Kansas can slow down their stars, Houston can still find other ways to score.
So their whole system is designed to create opportunities for everyone. That's tough to beat.
It is. They move the ball well, set good screens, and they're patient. They wait for the best shot. Kansas has to be super disciplined on defense the entire game, not just when they're guarding Houston's top guys.
Okay, so we've talked about the players, the matchups. What about the coaches? How could their decisions affect the game?
Well, Houston's coach, he's known for his defensive schemes. I bet he's going to throw all kinds of different looks at Kansas, maybe even double-team Dickinson sometimes to force the ball out of his hands.
And what about the Kansas coach? What adjustments might he make?
He's probably going to focus on getting those easy baskets, in transition. If they can push the pace and get some fast break points, that'll help them stay in it. And he might try to take advantage of any mismatches he sees, especially if those Houston starters get into foul trouble.
So both coaches have to be smart, make adjustments on the fly. It's a battle of wits almost.
Totally. It's one of the coolest things about this game, watching those two coaches go head-to-head. Okay, now let's get to the betting side of things. Houston's favored by 9.5 points. Is that spread too high, you think?
It's a lot, that's for sure, especially since the last game was so close.
Yeah, but remember, Houston's at home. And they've been almost unbeatable at home all season. The Fertitta Center, it's known for being loud, the fans are intense. That home court advantage could be a big factor.
So even though Kansas could keep it close, you're saying the spread might still be okay?
Yeah, I think so. But it's tough to bet against Houston on their home court, and that defense, it's just so hard to score against them consistently. But like we've talked about, Kansas has the talent, they've got the experience. They could cover that spread, especially if they control the boards, don't turn the ball over, and Mayo gets hot from three.
So for our listeners who are thinking about putting down some money on this game, what's your advice?
First things first, do your own research. Think about everything we've talked about, the stats, the matchups, home court advantage, the strengths and weaknesses of each team. You got to weigh it all out.
Don't just follow anyone's picks blindly, not even ours. Do your homework.
Exactly. And hey, if you're feeling adventurous, maybe check out those player prop bets. You could bet on how many points Dickinson scores, how many rebounds Roberts gets, whether Mayo hits over or under a certain number of threes.
Prop bets are fun. They can make the game even more exciting to watch.
For sure.
Now back to the spread. If you want to play it safe, betting on Houston to win straight up is probably the way to go. But if you're looking for a bigger payout, taking Kansas to cover might be tempting, especially if you think they can keep it close like last time.
It's your call, ultimately. But hopefully, our deep dive has given you the info you need to make a smart bet.
All right, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We've looked at the key matchups, the coaches, home court advantage, and even the betting angles. Now let's wrap things up by focusing on some of the finer details. Those things you might not notice right away, but could really swing the game. Okay, so we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into this Houston-Kansas matchup. We've talked about a lot, but before we make our final predictions.
Yeah, let's zero in on a few more things that could really make a difference tonight.
Okay, like what?
Well, one thing that stands out to me is the tempo. Houston, they want to slow it down, grind it out on defense, control the pace.
Right, make it their kind of game.
Exactly. But Kansas, they like to push the tempo, score in transition.
So it's a classic clash of styles. Who do you think wins that battle? Will one team be able to dictate the pace? Or will it be more back and forth?
You know, it's tough to say for sure, but I think Houston might have the edge when it comes to controlling the tempo. Their defense is just so good at forcing turnovers and disrupting the other team's flow.
Right, like we were talking about earlier.
If they can get Kansas out of our comfort zone, force them into more of a half-court game, that plays right into Houston's hands.
Speaking of Houston's defense, they love to trap. How do you think Kansas will handle that pressure? Can Dickinson make smart decisions when he's double-teamed?
That's the big question. Dickinson's super talented, no doubt, but he can turn the ball over when he's facing a lot of pressure. It'll be interesting to see if he can stay calm, find those open teammates when the traps come.
Okay, so that's something to watch for sure. What about on the other end? How do you think Houston's offense will do against Kansas's defense? Are there any matchups that favor Houston?
Well, Kansas's defense isn't on the same level as Houston's, but they have some solid defenders.
Like who?
Dajuan Harris, he's a quick guard, could give LJ Cryer some trouble. And if Zeke Mayo's focused, he could make things tough for Houston's shooters.
So it sounds like both teams have their work cut out for them on both ends of the court. Any other, like, under-the-radar factors that could come into play?
One thing that often gets overlooked but can be huge in close games, free throw shooting.
Oh, that's a good point. Nail-biters often come down to free throws, and both these teams have had their struggles from the line this season.
Exactly. If this one's close down the stretch, free throws could easily be the difference maker. Casual fans might not think about it, but it's a crucial detail.
Definitely. And another thing people sometimes forget about is coaching.
Oh, yeah, huge factor. Both these coaches are veterans. They know how to adjust during a game. It's like a chess match, you know?
It's each coach trying to outsmart the other.
Exactly. And whoever makes the better adjustments down the stretch could give their team that little extra edge.
Okay, so we've talked matchups, styles, coaching, even free throws, time for predictions. What's your gut feeling on this one?
Man, I've been going back and forth. But after thinking about everything, I'm going to stick with Houston.
Really?
Yeah. Their defense is just too good. I think they'll find a way to contain Dickinson and control the tempo. I'm saying Houston wins 75-67. They cover the spread.
That's a tough one. I was kind of leaning towards Kansas covering, but you've made some really good points. I think I'm going to go Houston too, but a bit closer, maybe 72-66.
It's going to be an awesome game to watch. And no matter who wins, I think we can all agree we've learned a lot about these teams.
Absolutely. And that's what the deep dive is all about. We
Right.
want you guys listening to really understand the game on a deeper level.
Right. So to everyone listening, enjoy the game tonight.
Pay attention to those little things we talked about. See if your predictions were right.
And if this deep dive got you thinking, if you want to explore some other topics, send us your own stuff. We'd love to do a personalized analysis just for you.
We're always ready to dive into something new. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, keep diving deep.